November 16th, 2024. Well, what I want to discuss tonight is something a little special, and that is like some of the information that was released in the last Wednesday's UAP hearing chaired by Representative Nancy Mace before the House Oversight Committee or some subcommittee thereof. And they were, I think the real highlight of this thing, in fact, is the document that was released along with it, although it wasn't significantly discussed at the meeting. And so the actual witness testimonies, I think there was an Admiral Tim Gallaudet, I think is a retired Rear Admiral. Lou Elizondo, I think we all know who he is, formerly with a leader of ATIP. Um, Michael Schellenberger, a journalist on Substack, and a doctor, I think it's a Green, no, Dr. Gold, excuse me, formerly of NASA, and I think he also might have been with Bigelow for a while too. So, and although that didn't too much come up at the meeting, but the real big thing was the document on the Immaculate Constellation program, a unacknowledged special access program in the Pentagon, which collects data on UAPs and, dare I say it, ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles. Oh, excuse me, but yeah, we're going to go there. At any rate, but at any rate, this apparently is an extensive database and goes back to at least 1991, kind of destroying the theory that the government wasn't interested in anything before the OSOP and ATIP programs, and what's happened since then. I guess they were, and it's pretty extensive. So I think that will be a major part of our discussion. Um, So let's go first a little bit of what was discussed actually in the meeting itself. The admiral was basically received what's known as the Go Fast video, which I think people have followed the UAP subject know what that is. That I guess you'd call it one of the orbs that was flying right above the sea level and was spotted by the FLIR system on the FA-18. And this, I believe, was off the Atlantic coast during a training exercise. At any rate, these were apparently flying around and getting close to the aircraft, and he received an urgent message that, ask him what are these things. And then the next day, apparently, the email had just disappeared from the computer like it was never there, and he presumed that security had found that this was considered to be a classified issue or sensitive issue, and they had just removed it for that reason. Interestingly enough, the people who were insistent on wanting to know the answer to what it was, the four-star admiral in charge of the operation, didn't, and his staff never talked about it again in subsequent meetings. So at any rate, that was kind of how he got tuned into this subject, apparently, and has since followed up with a lot of other things. Of course, we all know about Lou Elizondo, his book, Eminent, of course, and his the TV appearances on that special on the History Channel. And so, there's he was probably the key instigator of much of this. In fact, apparently the Immaculate Constellation program may have been created in the wake of his revelations and as a way to collect all the divergent information that was in various government channels so that it could be kind of controlled. So anyway, if you like these videos, please give me a like. Always looking for subscriptions. Of course, you can click the bell for notifications. And of course, I also post these on Rumble, so you can also follow me on Rumble. So that's kind of what was going on. Some of the notable things from Lou Elizondo, I think, is the fact that he had written a book and it got cleared through the classified clearance organization of the DoD called DOPSA, and And one of the things apparently, and also he had been ordered. One of the things he was not supposed to discuss was crash retrievals. And of course, he didn't discuss crash retrievals in his book or even in this meeting. It's interesting enough, though, that if there are no crash retrievals, then why would the security officer, forbid him to discuss crash retrievals? I mean, if, name something else that doesn't exist, why would you be prohibited to discuss this if it doesn't exist? So it seems to indicate it does exist. Now, why he could mention the fact that he was prohibited to discuss the subject, I don't know. Perhaps I've often said about him, I think he tends to walk a tightrope and tries to not fall off of it. If he falls off of it, he might have broke the rule, but if he's on it, he's still okay, but he's on the edge, on the border, you might say. At any rate, that was one of the main things I thought was notable about that. There's a whole bunch of other things, of course, and you can find, of course, the whole briefing on YouTube. I think News Nation has it on their site. I could put a link to it on the description below for anybody's benefit that wants to watch it. It's about over 2 hours, but it's interesting. They were obviously guarded in what they could say because the people here all had access to some classified information, except for the journalist at least, and even there he had to protect sources, and so you don't get the full disclosure. So some people were kind of going ho-hum. We didn't get to see the saucer and the alien body, so therefore it's boring. But actually, to somebody such as myself that kind of analyzes these things and puts two and two together, looks between the lines, it's very interesting. One thing that came up with Elizondo was the fact that the interaction, let's say, between what we know, what Elizondo said, what we know from other sources, and what one of the congressmen asked, because the congressman apparently feels freer to talk, and at any rate, it's known that one of the aspects of the OSOP program that was, that predated ATIP, that was to get UFO materials. Isn't that talking about crash retrieve? Well, maybe they can. I don't know. Oh, UFO materials from a major defense contractor that had possession of them, and so that they could study it. Well. And of course, apparently that transfer from this contractor to the Bigelow organization was blocked by the Secretary of the Air Force. So that comes out of that. Then the congressman talks about the fact that says that Lockheed Martin was the one that had the craft or the materials, let's call them, and that, and of course, there was no direct confirmation from, but it's clear in the context that's what was involved. Now let's go back to the Admiral Wilson memo, which wasn't in this meeting, but we know about it. People that follow this know about this. We know that Admiral Wilson went to a contractor out west, which is known for working on some of our most sensitive aerospace programs, right? And that they were involved in a reverse engineering program about a craft that was not made by human hands, right? So between what the congressman said and what we're seeing here, we know pretty clear who that contractor was. And it all fits together, what I'm saying. The pattern fits together, and it's in a relatively the same time frame, if you think about it, all in the late around 2000 or thereabouts, or maybe 1999 to 2004 or 5. So it fits into that period. And what was also interesting is this contractor really wanted to get rid of the material. They really weren't that interested in messing with it anymore, apparently. But it was forbidden by the Secretary of the Air Force, which says that the Air Force apparently has control over it. Huh? And so there you have it. I just thought you'd find that interesting. That's something that came out of it. Now, you might not have picked that up just watching it if you aren't let's say, a person that studies this stuff in detail. But if you are, well, I can help out a little bit with the interpretation. And so, anyway, that's another thing that came out of it. There was a lot of discussion about, are these objects, a flight risk or flight safety risks? And they generally they treat them as if they are. I'm not so sure they are, because I'm not sure. I mean, they rarely ever crash into an aircraft, so I tend to think maybe that they're capable of avoiding aircraft, that they don't want to crash into one of our planes any more than we want them to, maybe. I mean, we don't know what they may have avoidance technologies that are adequate to avoid that. That's something nobody discussed. But then again, if you're trying to promote further interest in the subject by the government and further study, that's not the position one should take, right? But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is quite dangerous. Who knows? I always said it could be teenage alien drivers, But anyhow, I digress. But the point is, so that was, interesting, and I thought useful. Now, what really, the Schellenberger is the source for the Immaculate Constellation document. He has a whistleblower, and as a reporter, he's been able to determine from other sources that this is a credible person who had access to this database, apparently, the Pentagon, and that he's determined that he's not linked in with all the other people that we know about, like I guess Elizondo and company and whoever else, some of the other ones. And supposedly he's convinced that this person is who he says he is and is a credible person, and that he went forward. I guess the summary is pretty much the document he went forward to, or a summary of it, to congressional committees per the fiscal year 23 Defense Authorization Act, which allowed people to come forward and report about these matters to Congress. The presumption being that these have been withheld and have been properly authorized by Congress. So, and another twist on it, I think Elizondo said that this was probably being managed out of the White House in 17. But remember, it may not be maybe Trump wasn't directly involved. It's possible it was his national security advisor or the staff their staff that was managing it, perhaps. At any rate, we don't know that, but that's speculation, I guess. But anyhow, so the document is very fascinating. I will put a link to it because it's on Nancy Mace's, Representative Mace's website also, which you might find interesting. It's about, 11 pages long, I believe it is. And it basically, it looks to be written in the kind of terminology and jargon that, the Defense Department or official government intelligence document would be written in. It isn't a classified document. It's obviously a summary of stuff he got off these databases. And it's been approved for release by the State Department's Office for Declassification. That's interesting. Are we having a little interagency rivalry here, perhaps? At any rate, so I guess it's okay for us to have. I'm sure people on the project are really ticked. Whatever. But anyhow, I don't know whether this is good or bad. I don't know, but it's out. And what it does, it kind of describes the objective of this program. And one of the things that it is to document information about the observations of UAPs, technology of unknown origin, a new acronym I haven't seen before, and of course NIH, non-human, and NHI, excuse me, non-human intelligence. A lot of acronyms in this document, and get this, ARVs, RVs. Now, and it says below reproduction vehicles. Ouch. Well, interesting, because of course ARV, if you know anything about the Mark McCandlish issue, well, there's an old story, and one that I personally didn't believe was authentic. Maybe, sorry, Mark, I may have been wrong. I don't know. But he's no longer with us. He apparently committed suicide according to the coroner and his county, of a shotgun blast to the head in April 13th, 2021, about a month before he was going to go talk to the Senate about what he knew. Oh well. At any rate, The story behind it, I'll be a little bit brief on this. This may go longer than a normal video, but okay. And you may know it or you may not. And like I said, I personally discounted this, but it's a big, long legend in the subject, you might say. And basically, in 1988, a guy named Brad Sorensen, who was a friend of McCandlish, attended a private kind of sensitive air show, I think at Norton Air Base it was, and with a dignitary who some people later suggest was the Secretary of Defense at the time. But at any rate, and apparently that's how this person got into this classified presentation. Let's put it this way: whenever I went to anything that was, I mean, you had to have like a classified visit request and IDs verified, and well, I don't know. But at any rate, somehow, allegedly, that's why I was partly skeptical. But maybe if it's the Secretary of Defense and his assistant, maybe they just walk in and they don't really check IDs on them. I don't know. At any rate, and when he got in there, this dignitary told Sorensen, I had no idea they were going to show this sort of stuff, or I wouldn't have brought you in here. Apparently, among other things, was the F-117A, which had not yet been declassified, and also were three objects which sort of looked like somewhat saucer-shaped UFO-like items. And they were hovering above the ground, and this guy was able to describe to Sorensen what they looked like. And supposedly one of them had some panels removed so he could see what was inside. And based on Sorensen's description, by the way, McCandlish is an aviation illustrator that works for companies, at least used to work for companies before he went out with this stuff, and did drawings of future concepts and stuff like that. And so he drew this up, what this looked like. And this whole thing became kind of legend, I guess, in the UFO world. And so, at any rate, that was called, they allegedly were called alien reproduction vehicles, hence ARV, or just RV is another thing. Well, but it suggests that UAP type technology in the reverse engineering program has had some success. Because there's part of the document goes into a place where the Indo-PACOM, which is, I guess, the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean Command, observed a RV, one of these RVs flying around in that area and monitored it and what it was doing. And you can read about it in the document. But I'm like, so they're actually saying that they're actually monitoring the activities of these. Of course, who did the reproduction? Is this one of ours or is this Chinese? I'll also point out that if you follow some of the things that have come forward, there was a Marine named Michael Herrera who allegedly was waylaid by some black ops team in Indonesia during a hurricane in 2008, and a similar vehicle of that sort landed and picked up some containers, let's just say, that this team had brought to be retrieved or something, and were kind of threatened and eventually sent back to their unit. I think they kind of unloaded their weapons and strapped them around their back and said, "Don't look back and go." And so anyhow, and this guy eventually was forced by a Air Force colonel who wasn't wearing his name tag, which makes him out of the proper uniform, to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which he obeyed until these whistleblower laws were passed in the NDAA, and then he came forward. So anyway, there's a story about that, which I think, again, sort of correlates with what's in this document, not specifically, because it doesn't talk about the hurricane, but the idea that these RV-type vehicles are operating in that region for some reason. Again, I don't know. I'll have to say about that whole subject is I've been on the space show, specifically said I have my doubts that we've been able to successfully reverse engineer any of this stuff. And I'd also point out that that was what Admiral Wilson was told. Of course, he could have been disinformed, of course. But then again, if the same company just a few years later was happy to get rid of the thing, and one of the reasons they might be happy to get rid of it is just all the headaches of dealing with it dealing with something off the books that wasn't properly funded, the federal acquisition regulations, because allegedly this stuff was being booked into their overhead improperly. You could see why they might just say that if it wasn't being productive studying it, that they'd just be glad to get it off their get it out of their shop and not have to worry about it anymore. On the other hand, if it had been successful, maybe somebody else was successful. I don't know what to make of this. I tell you that does raise a little bit of skepticism in my point, although the document specifically talks about their sensors detecting these things, and apparently are capable of detecting them. But at any rate, it's some interesting stuff, and I think it's another step forward. What I thought was also interesting about the meeting in general was the fact that it looks to me like the committee, the members of the committee there this time were taking the thing fairly seriously. I didn't think anybody was that skeptical in the sense of this is all nonsense, why are we wasting our time? I thought they almost all were taking it fairly seriously. And that was a little bit different, I think, than the previous meetings I've seen, where it was not quite as seriously. And I remember these people, many of them have probably had some classified briefings in between the previous meetings. So, and I think in a lot of ways, this also correlates very well with what David Grush said last year. Okay. Anyway, that's basically what it was. I just thought you all might find interesting. I'll put those links I mentioned in the description below so you can judge for yourself. And I'll be wrapping this up now. Of course, I will post this on YouTube and Rumble as always, and the links to the addresses, of my social media accounts are in the description below. All for now.